I speak 9 languages.
9 languages. That's incredible.
I speak 9 languages, I said. The rich man just laughed. He looked at my dirty clothes and worn-out shoes. He had no idea that his life was about to change. I was just a man with nothing, a whisper in the city's chaos. Most people just saw my tattered clothes and turned away from my tired face. But I held a treasure more valuable than any fortune. The loyalty of my dog, Buddy. That silent language of love was about to change my destiny forever. I spoke those words. I speak 9 languages. A quiet challenge that seemed to get lost in the noise of the city. A city that had long stopped listening to men like me. The man in the fine white robes, a millionaire they called Sheikh Omar, just laughed. It was a loud, amused sound that seemed to mock the dirty clothes I wore and the cold stone I called home. He couldn't see the real me, only the tattered clothes and the beard tangled with the secrets of the street. The story of how I came to be in front of him began just moments before. My loyal dog, Buddy, was pressed against my leg, a small, furry warmth against the city's unforgiving cold. We were just standing there, as we did most nights, when the man's driver fumbled and a simple leather wallet fell from the open car door. It landed with a soft thud, a small thing that held more money than I'd seen in years. I didn't even think about it. My hand, rough and dirty, held it out to him. It wasn't a choice. It was just what you do. I've always believed that some things are more important than money, and an honest heart is one of them. Sheikh Omar looked at me, his smile fading into a look of confusion. He expected a hand held out for money, not a wallet given back. He saw my bare feet, my ragged clothes, Buddy looking up at me as if I were the king of the world. He saw the way I kept my head held high, even when the world looked down on me. The neon glow of the cafe sign flickered, making the whole scene feel like a strange, unpredictable dream. Then, a smirk spread across his face, and he decided to have a little fun. 9 languages, he repeated, his voice full of doubt and amusement. Then show me. I just nodded. What was there to lose? The street around us was a symphony of Friday night sounds. Car horns honked a constant rhythm. People laughed loudly. Vendors shouted to sell their goods. But I stood still, my world narrowing down to this one strange moment. The bustling life around me fading away. Buddy, sensing the change in the air, let out a soft whine of encouragement, as if he knew my next words would matter. My first words were in French. They came out of my mouth as if I had spoken them my whole life, not just picked them up from discarded books and overheard conversations on the streets. I spoke with a fluid grace, complimenting his tailored robes and the expensive car. He blinked, then laughed again, but the sound was a little less confident. Beginner's luck, he said, but I could hear a hint of curiosity now. Next, he asked for Spanish. The words came to me easily, rolling off my tongue like a flowing river. I told him that life on the streets teaches many things, some more valuable than gold. I saw his driver, who had been watching with a frown, look at me with new eyes. He knew a real accent when he heard one. I switched again, flowing into Italian, Portuguese, and then Mandarin. Each time I felt the words with my whole being. They weren't just sounds, they were parts of me, pieces of the world I had collected. My voice wasn't just speaking, it was telling my story, a story of survival and endless learning. People walking by slowed down, their faces showing their surprise. They saw a man who looked like he hadn't eaten in days, but who spoke with the precision and elegance of a professor. Buddy let out a small bark, his tail thumping against my torn trousers as if he were my biggest fan, cheering me on with each phrase. The knowledge I held wasn't from a classroom, it was from a different kind of school. I had learned Portuguese from an old woman who sold scarves on a corner and would tell me stories of her homeland, her words a quiet comfort. I had learned Mandarin from a family that ran a small market, their whispered words about their children's grades and a tired mother's worries becoming a puzzle I slowly pieced together. The Italian came from a musician who played on a street corner and shared songs with me, his voice a lesson in rhythm and tone. Each language was a tiny bit of someone else's life, a small window into a world I didn't belong to, yet held a piece of in my heart. When Omar demanded each language, I wasn't just proving a point. I was sharing pieces of my own lonely and rich journey, a journey marked by the hunger for knowledge. Omar's laughter finally stopped, fading into silence. The smirk on his face was gone, replaced by a serious, almost stern look. He folded his arms, his eyes fixed on me. "Arabic?" he said, his voice now a final, deep challenge. "Let's see you fool me in my own tongue." I smiled faintly. This was my last secret, the deepest part of my hidden world. I began to speak, not with the quickness of the other languages, but with a careful, classical tone. The words I chose were old and beautiful, with a gentle, flowing rhythm. I spoke a proverb about being kind to strangers, a saying that grandmothers used to whisper in old stories told in desert tents. The sound of my voice filled the space between us, and for a moment, all the noise of the city faded away. I wasn't a homeless man anymore. I was just a person speaking a language that was a part of me. I saw something in Omar's eyes change. The look of surprise softened into recognition, as if he were listening to a song from his own childhood. The words I used were not common street words. They were from a dialect I had picked up from an old religious book that had been thrown out behind a library. For years I had read it, practicing the sounds, the strange flow of a language that felt both foreign and oddly familiar. The proverb I quoted seemed to hit him deep in his heart, reminding him of a time and place far from the bustling city. It was a language of family and home and a kindness that was hard to find on the streets. I saw a tear form in the corner of his eye, and I knew that something inside of him had shifted. The man who had been laughing at me was gone. In his place was a man who saw me, not for what I was on the outside, but for what I held on the inside. His demeanor had completely changed from amusement to genuine respect. "Where did you learn this?" he asked, his voice now soft, the question filled with genuine wonder. "Everywhere," I replied, the word a simple summary of a complicated past. "From books people left behind, from conversations I overheard, from libraries that don't ask for a home address. To survive, you must learn to listen." My words were not a boast. They were simply the truth of my life. My survival depended on my ability to understand the world around me. I had to know when tourists were asking for directions, so I could help them, and maybe get a few coins. I had to know when a vendor was angry about something, so I could stay out of their way. Most importantly, I had to listen to the whispers of danger in the alleyways at night, a language of its own. My mind had become a sponge, soaking up every sound and every word, organizing them into a mental map of the city that was my home. Omar waved his driver away, motioning for him to give us space. The amusement was gone completely, replaced by deep thought. 9 languages, he whispered to himself. You weren't lying. I shook my head. Why would I? Lies waste your breath, and on the street, every breath keeps you alive. Buddy leaned against me again, his eyes bright, sensing my calm. Omar looked at me, this man of old rags but a rich mind. He seemed to be wondering how someone with such a great gift could have fallen so low. He saw the truth of my words and the pain behind them. He saw that the doors of opportunity had always been closed to me, no matter how many keys I held in my mind. The irony of my situation was not lost on me. A man of so many words with no place to truly speak them. You could be working for embassies, for universities, he said, the wonder clear in his voice. I chuckled, but it was a bitter sound, a sound of a man who knew the hard truth of the world. Doors don't open for men who smell of alleyways, I said. They only open for men who have keys. The truth of my words seemed to hit him hard, a sting he hadn't expected. He looked at his beautiful black car, then back at me. Come with me, he said. Dinner, my treat, you and your dog. My first thought was to say no. The streets had taught me that offers like this often hide a trap, that kindness can turn to cruelty in a second. But Buddy nudged my leg gently, a silent command that was more powerful than any words. It was as if he were saying, trust this man, just this once. I nodded slowly. All right, I said, pointing at Buddy, but he eats first. Omar's face broke into a small smile. Done? We climbed into the car. The plush leather seats were so soft, a complete change from the hard pavement I was used to. Buddy curled up at my feet, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt walls around me that weren't made of cold, hard concrete. The car ride was a silent journey through a world I had only ever seen from the outside. The clean windows showed me a city of lights and promise, a city that had always felt 1,000,000 miles away. I watched the city's neon signs blur past, my mind reeling. Was this a trick, a cruel joke, I felt the soft leather of the seat under my hand and the warmth of Buddy's fur against my feet. For the first time, I felt a tiny seed of hope, a hope that was as fragile as a single thread of thread. We arrived at a quiet restaurant, a place that felt more like a rich person's house than a public eating place. Its lights glowed warmly against the cool night. When we walked in, the staff froze, looking at Omar and then at me, this man in rags and my dog. They blinked in disbelief, their faces a mixture of confusion and shock. Omar led us to a private room, and soon plates filled with amazing food were brought in. Platters of lamb, piles of fluffy rice, and fresh bread fragrant with spices. The smell was incredible, a sweet pain to my stomach that had been empty for a day. But I didn't touch it. I reached down first, taking a beautiful china bowl and filling it with food for Buddy. I watched as he ate happily, his tail wagging a steady rhythm of pure joy. Only when he was full did I start to eat. Omar watched me silently, and I could feel his respect growing in the quiet room. He understood that my loyalty to Buddy was not just an act, but a deep, true part of who I was. As we ate, he asked me about my life, his voice gentle and curious. "What's your story, Kevin? Why here? Why like this?" I took a moment before I answered, chewing slowly and staring into the distance. "Life just fell apart," I said. "Jobs disappeared, my family was gone, but the languages stayed." "Languages," he repeated, thinking deeply. "Why so many?" I smiled a little. "Each language is like a door," I explained. "When the world closes one door on you, another one opens. On the street, you learn to listen to survive. A tourist needs directions. A vendor says something in a different language. A book left on the bench tells a story. You put all the pieces together. The 9 languages became 9 doors that kept me breathing when the world felt like it was closing in. I saw him listening, not just hearing, but understanding the deeper meaning of my words. He seemed to realize that I had built my own world, a world of words, when the real world had turned its back on me. The hunger in his eyes was not for food, but for the truth I spoke. Omar leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "Do you know why I stopped tonight?" he asked. "It wasn't just because you returned my wallet. I have big talks tomorrow. Men from Europe, Asia, even Latin America. They each guard their own language fiercely. My advisors are worried I will be outnumbered. A single mistake in translation could cost me millions. A single wrong word, an insult, a lost contract. It could all fall apart." He looked at me, a man with no home, and he said, "Yet here you are, a man with 9 keys in his mouth." I laughed softly. "And no roof over my head." His face softened. "Perhaps that can change," he said. I looked at him, trying to see if he was serious, if this was just a game. Buddy lifted his head from his empty bowl, licking his lips and wagging his tail. The room became quiet. Not an uncomfortable quiet, but a quiet full of possibilities. "Tomorrow," Omar said, "you come with me. You just sit quietly. When I need you to, you speak. If you are good, your life could change forever." He explained that he needed someone with an ear for nuance, someone who could hear what was not being said, as much as what was. His professional translators were good, but they were like machines. They could not hear the small things, the unspoken meanings, the feelings behind the words. They had not learned the street's lessons in survival that made you listen to every detail. His eyes held a serious look. A look that told me this was not a joke or a test. This was real. He had seen something in me that was worth more than money. I hesitated. I had heard promises before. On the street, promises were as common as broken glass. I had been promised coins that never came, jobs that vanished, and kindness that turned to cruelty. But Buddy's nudges against my leg felt different, a silent command that was more powerful than any words. It was as if he were saying, "Trust this man, just this once." I knew in my heart that this was a moment I had to take. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Omar's face held a faint smile. "Because liars beg for coins," he said, his voice full of firm belief. "You returned a wallet without a single cent missing, because fools boast without proof. You spoke 9 truths in 9 different languages. And because loyalty is a gift that is rare, I saw it when you fed your dog first." My throat felt tight. It was a new feeling to hear myself described as valuable, to have my honesty and loyalty recognized and praised. Buddy let out a single bark, as if signing the deal. I nodded. "I'll come," I said. "Not for money, but because doors are meant to be opened." My voice was a little shaky, but the words were firm. I was ready to take a risk, not for myself, but for the chance to prove that the lessons I had learned on the streets had a purpose, that my whole life had been leading up to this one moment. Omar seemed to understand. He didn't ask for a promise or a contract. He just nodded, as if my word was enough. As we left the restaurant, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The streets had given me so many lessons in survival, in listening, in being invisible. Now, maybe, just maybe, they had prepared me for something more. The weight of the world felt a little lighter. That night, Kevin and Buddy were given a room at one of Omar's hotels. The bed was so soft it felt like a cloud, and the clean water from the faucet was a miracle I couldn't stop thinking about. I lay awake, listening to the city sounds, now muffled by thick curtains. The silence was louder than the noise. Buddy snored gently at my feet, his breathing a comforting rhythm in the dark. My mind went back to the alleys, the shelters, the hunger. It was hard to believe that my life had changed so quickly, in just one night. I thought about the feeling of being cold, of a stomach that ached with hunger. I remembered the nights I had spent curled up under a bridge, listening to the sounds of the city's underbelly. I thought of the fear and the loneliness, but I also remembered the kindness of a stranger who had given me a sandwich, the old woman who had given Buddy a small piece of bread, and the quiet comfort of a library that had let me read without judgment. All those moments, the good and the bad, had led me here. Tomorrow was a risk, but it was also a chance to not just be seen, but to matter. 9 languages, I whispered into the dark. Maybe they are worth more than just survival. Buddy stirred, pressing his body against my leg, a warm, solid weight, reminding me that whatever came next, we would face it together. His presence was my anchor. The morning came with golden light shining through the window. I dressed in the clean clothes Omar's staff had brought for me, simple but nice. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The long, tangled hair was clean and neatly combed, the wild beard was trimmed, and the dirt was gone from my face. My eyes still held the tiredness of the street, but behind it, there was a new light of hope, a glimmer of the man I used to be and the man I could become. Buddy barked happily at the bowl of food brought to our room. He ate with so much joy, and I felt a happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. Omar arrived soon after, his robes perfect, his smile warm. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," I said, my voice steady. We left together and walked towards the conference hall, a giant building with marble floors that gleamed, and the sounds of many different languages echoing off the walls. My heart was beating fast. 9 doors were waiting, and I was about to knock. I thought about how much my life had changed in such a short time. Just yesterday, I was worried about where I would get my next meal. Today, I was walking into a place where deals worth billions of dollars were made. My hand went to my chest, where I could feel the rhythmic beat of my heart, a constant reminder of the life that was still in me. I looked at Buddy, who was walking proudly beside me, and I felt a wave of love for him. He was the reason I was here. He was the one who had given me the courage to trust Omar. The hall was huge, filled with powerful men and women from all over the world. They were all dressed in expensive suits and dresses, and they guarded their languages like shields, speaking with an air of authority and a careful choice of words. Omar didn't say who I was, just that I was an observer, earning me puzzled looks from everyone. I just stayed quiet, my presence almost invisible in the grand room, and Buddy was safe in a side room with food and water, waiting patiently for my return. Hours passed with speeches and very careful conversations. Then, at a very important moment, a man from Europe leaned forward and spoke in a sharp, hurried French. The professional translator stumbled, missing a key part of what he said, a small but crucial detail that could have ruined the whole deal. I cleared my throat softly and said the exact words with perfect clarity, saving Omar from a disastrous misinterpretation. Everyone looked at me, the room went silent, and then people started to whisper. Omar hid a smile, his face a mask of triumph. The talks continued, shifting from Spanish to Mandarin to Portuguese. Each time, my quiet voice filled the gaps the other translators couldn't, correcting small mistakes and bridging cultural differences. By the 3rd time, Their eyes were wide with shock. By the fifth, a new kind of respect had settled over me. The man who looked like nobody had become the most important person in the room, the silent compass guiding the conversations, the true master of the language of trust. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was helping to make important things happen. I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't known in years. That evening, the talks ended with handshakes and new deals worth billions of dollars. Omar put his hand on my shoulder, a firm, proud gesture. "You didn't just translate words," he said, his voice full of warmth. "You translated trust." I shook my head, my heart full. I just spoke the truth. Omar's eyes shone. "And my friend," he said, "that is a gift without a price." Reporters rushed toward us, their cameras flashing like lightning, eager to capture a piece of the story. Omar shielded me from them and led me out quietly. "Tonight," he said, "we will celebrate. And then we will decide your future." I was still in a kind of dream, unsure if this was really happening. Buddy's happy bark greeted me at the hotel door. It was the only thing that felt completely real, the one constant in a life that had been turned upside down. I crouched down and hugged him tight. "We did it, boy," I whispered. He licked my face, his tail wagging fast, a metronome of pure joy. Omar watched us, his face unreadable but warm with quiet emotion. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "your life begins again." I didn't answer right away. I just pressed my head against Buddy's, feeling the steady beat of his heart. 9 languages had saved a rich man's fortune, but loyalty, a loyalty without words, was what made me truly rich. For the first time in years, I dared to think about a future not on the streets, but standing tall with my dog and my pride. My new beginning was within my grasp. The next morning felt strange and unreal. I woke up in the hotel room, not to the sounds of traffic and rustling bags, but to silence, broken only by Buddy's soft snoring. Sunlight came through the curtains, warming my face. For so many years, every morning was about survival, finding food, and finding a safe place to hide. But today was different. When I looked in the mirror, I still saw the tired eyes of a man who had been through so much. But behind them, there was something new. Hope. Buddy's tail wagged like crazy, as if he knew our lives had changed for good. Downstairs, Sheikh Omar was waiting with his assistants, but I saw that he looked at me with a real and deep kindness. "Today," he said, "we talk about what you want, not just what I need." I was shocked. No one had ever asked me that before. On the street, there was no room for wants, only needs. "A roof," I said finally, "work that lets me stand proud, and food for him," I added, pointing to Buddy. Omar smiled softly. "Simple and honest," he said, "but I think the world can give you much more. You gave me more than any translator ever has." He saw that I was a man of integrity, not just of words. My desires were simple, but my contribution had been profound. Later that day, Omar took me to a meeting in one of the city's tall skyscrapers. I was nervous. Buddy walked close by my side. Executives in expensive suits whispered as we walked past, confused to see a homeless man and his dog in their fancy boardroom. Omar looked at them with a stern expression. "This man saved your contracts yesterday," he said. "Treat him with respect." I wasn't used to anyone defending me, especially a man as powerful as Omar. But I sat down, and Buddy sat proudly at my feet, his ears perked up as if he understood everything. The executives started to talk about future deals. Omar stopped them. "Kevin will be in charge of translations personally," he announced. "His instincts catch things that machines and other people miss." The room filled with surprised whispers. I lifted my hands nervously. "I'm no businessman," I said. "I'm just a man who listens." Omar smiled. "And that is exactly why you are needed," he said. "Businessmen chase money. Listeners build trust." I thought about that for a moment. I had always listened to the whispers of danger in the alleyways, to the conversations of strangers, to Buddy's soft whines of warning. Maybe listening was not just for survival. Maybe it was a gift that was finally being seen. That evening, Omar invited me to have dinner with his family. For the first time in so long, I sat at a table where there was more laughter than silence. My beard was still messy and my hair was still tangled, but no one made fun of me. The children asked about Buddy, who loved all the attention he was getting. Omar's eldest son asked, "How many languages does your dog speak?" I laughed. "Just one," I said. "The language of loyalty." The family laughed, but Omar looked at me with a quiet pride. I understood then that respect wasn't about money or titles. It was about being seen as an equal, and tonight, I was. Weeks went by, and I traveled with Omar to different meetings and conferences. Every time, Buddy came with me, his tail wagging as if he were part of the group. I fixed bad translations, made sure people from different cultures understood each other, and with every success, people looked at me not with pity, but with admiration. Slowly, I got used to hotel rooms, eating every day and wearing clean clothes. But every night before I went to sleep, I whispered to Buddy, "We don't forget. The streets made us strong." Buddy would rest his head on my chest, as if he agreed. It was nice to be comfortable, but I didn't want to forget where I came from. One day I was walking in a busy market when I heard a tourist couple arguing with a vendor. Their English was broken, and his Arabic was confusing. I walked over, calmly translated what they were trying to say, and helped them solve the problem. The tourists thanked me warmly and tried to give me some money. I shook my head and gave the money to the vendor instead. "Respect is worth more than coins," I said. They smiled, understanding. Omar, who had been watching, nodded. "That's why I trust you," he said. "Not because you speak 9 languages, but because you speak the language of integrity." Even with all the good things that were happening, I still had moments of doubt. I would sometimes wake up in a panic, expecting to see the sky through a broken roof or to feel the sharp pain of hunger. I was afraid that one mistake would send me back to the alleys. One night, Omar noticed I was feeling uneasy. "The past is not a chain," he said gently. "It's a foundation. You built strength on those streets. That strength is why you are here now." I nodded slowly. Buddy leaned against my leg, warm and steady. In his eyes, there was no doubt, no past, and no future. Just the present. And that was enough. He was a constant reminder of my foundation. More and more, people from other countries started asking for me personally. They were amazed at how I could bridge the gap between their words and their intentions. Stories about me started to appear in the newspapers. From Streets to Summit, the homeless translator who changed deals. I hated the headlines. They made me feel embarrassed. But Omar reminded me, "Your story is not a source of shame. It's a source of power. People need to see what strength can become." I agreed, even though I didn't want the fame. I just wanted a stable life, food for Buddy, and a purpose for myself. But if my story could help others who were still lost on the streets, maybe the attention was worth it. Buddy let out a single bark, as if he approved. Months later, Omar took me back to the same street where we first met. The neon sign of the cafe was still flickering, and the sidewalk was wet from the rain. "Do you remember?" Omar asked. I nodded, a faint smile on my face. "You laughed at me." Omar laughed again, a real, full laugh this time. "Yes, but you taught me humility," he said. "Money can blind a man, but you, Kevin, you showed me true wealth can be hidden in rags." I looked around at the busy city. I thought about all the nights I felt invisible, all the people who walked by without even seeing me. I knew that the moment Omar had stopped had been a miracle disguised as a chance encounter. As the year went on, I was able to move into a small apartment with my new salary. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Buddy immediately claimed the couch, his tail wagging as if he owned the place. I filled the cupboards with food, something I once thought impossible. But I never threw away my old jacket. I kept it hanging near the door, a reminder of who I had been. When Omar visited, he smiled at the jacket. "It still smells like rain," I said. "Then never wash it," he replied. "Let it remind you of the night the doors opened." "Some scars are worth keeping," I agreed. One evening, while walking Buddy, I saw a homeless boy curled up under a bridge. The sight of him hurt my heart. It was like looking at a younger me. I walked over and gave him half of my sandwich and some gentle words. The boy looked up, his eyes wide. "Why?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Because someone stopped for me once," I said. "Now I stop for you." The boy's gratitude lit up the dark corner. I walked away with Buddy, my heart full. I understood now that survival wasn't the end of my story. Giving back was. And Buddy, loyal as always, wagged his tail as if he knew that our mission had changed. Omar later started a foundation in my name. Its goal was to help young people learn languages and get an education. I didn't want my name on it at first, but Omar insisted. Your journey is proof that talent can be found anywhere, even in the alleys. We cannot waste it. I finally agreed, realizing it wasn't about me. It was about helping others find their voices. At the opening event, I spoke simply. I was invisible, I said. Languages made me seen, but the loyalty my dog taught me is what kept me alive. I hope this foundation helps others find, not just words, but their own worth. The crowd clapped loudly. Buddy barked proudly. Years passed, but I never lost my humility. I continued to travel with Omar, continued to help people, and continued to return to the same streets with food and blankets for those who were still struggling. People would whisper my story, sometimes making it bigger, sometimes smaller, but always with respect. From rags to respect, from the alleys to the most important places, I had walked a path no one thought was possible. But whenever someone asked me what my greatest treasure was, I always gave the same answer. It wasn't the 9 languages, the money, or the fame. My treasure was Buddy. He stayed with me when the whole world left, and that kind of loyalty is priceless. On the anniversary of the night we met, Omar, Buddy, and I sat outside the cafe again. We were sipping tea, and a gentle rain was falling. It was as if the night itself wanted to celebrate our story. Omar lifted his cup. To 9 languages, he said, making a toast. I smiled. And to one truth, I replied. Which is? He asked, tilting his head. I scratched Buddy's ears. That love and loyalty need no translation. Buddy barked once, and we all laughed, our voices joining the quiet sounds of the city. And for the first time in my life, I knew I truly belonged.